You are scrolling through real estate listings at midnight and every single house that doesn't look like it is about to collapse costs $500,000. The kitchen has laminate countertops from 2003, the carpet is a suspicious shade of beige, and the listing agent has the audacity to call it a starter home. Meanwhile, you are sitting there doing mental math on your salary, wondering if you somehow missed a massive promotion or if the entire housing market has collectively lost its mind. I have a spoiler alert for you that might sting. It isn't you, it is the math, and the math in 2026 is absolutely brutal. My name is Aliana, and today we are going to do something that real estate agents genuinely hate. We are going to calculate who can actually afford a $500,000 house in today's market. Not who the bank will give a loan to, because those are two very different things, but who can legitimately afford it without turning their life into a perpetual financial stress simulator. There is a massive difference between qualifying for a mortgage and actually being able to sleep at night after you sign that mountain of paperwork. Let us start with the uncomfortable reality that in dozens of markets across the country right now, $500,000 is the baseline. That kind of money isn't getting you a mansion with a winding driveway. In cities like Denver, Austin, or anything within commuting distance of a major metro area, that $500,000 is getting you a 1,200 square foot box with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a yard roughly the size of a beach towel. The median household income in America is hovering around $84,000, which means we are essentially asking people to afford homes that cost 6 times their annual income. If that ratio sounds insane to you, it is because you are paying attention. Everyone keeps saying you can do it. The mortgage broker says you are approved, your parents bought a house on way less, and some influencer on TikTok is flipping houses with no money down. The problem is that everyone is lying to you about what affordable actually means. The first place these dreams go to die is the down payment. The old rule of thumb was 20% down, which on a $500,000 house is $100,000 in cold, hard cash. Let me say that number again so it can sink in, $100,000. The median savings account in America has around $8,000 in it, so for the average person, you aren't just a little short, you are $92,000 short. If you are making $84,000 a year and somehow manage to save 10% of your gross income, which almost nobody actually does, you are saving $8,400 per year. At that rate, it would take you 12 years just to save the down payment, and that assumes housing prices don't go up in the meantime, which we all know they absolutely will. So, what do most people do? They skip the 20% and put down 5 or 10% instead. If you do that, congratulations, you have just unlocked a new monthly expense called private mortgage insurance, or PMI. This is essentially a poverty tax that runs anywhere from $200 to $400 per month depending on your loan. You are paying extra money every single month for insurance that protects the bank, not you, because they are worried you might default on a loan you can barely afford. You are starting your homeownership journey from a position of financial punishment. Now let us talk about the actual mortgage payment. If you somehow scraped together 10%, which is $50,000, you are left with a $450,000 loan. At current interest rates in the 6 to 7% range, your monthly payment for principal and interest alone is going to land somewhere between $2,700 and $2,850. But that number doesn't include a single other thing you need to actually live in the house. We have to add property taxes, which depending on your location, will cost you roughly $500 per month if we are being conservative. Then there is homeowners insurance, which has skyrocketed because the world is getting more expensive to insure, adding another $250 to $350 per month. Then there is maintenance, the silent killer everyone forgets until the water heater explodes at 11 p.m. on a Sunday. The general rule is to budget 1% of your home's value per year for repairs. On a $500,000 house, that is $5,000 annually, or about $417 every month. When you add the mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and that $300 PMI tax, your total monthly housing cost is now sitting at roughly $4,367. That assumes nothing major breaks, you don't need a new roof, and your HOA doesn't send you a random $3,000 bill for repaving the neighborhood. Financial advisors will tell you that you shouldn't spend more than 28% of your gross monthly income on housing. If you are spending $4,300 a month and want that to represent 28% of your income, you need to be making roughly $187,000 per year. Even if we use the bank's much riskier 43% debt-to-income rule, you still need to be pulling in around $150,000 annually. Only about 10 to 20% of US households make that much money, which means 80% of American households cannot comfortably afford a $500,000 house under any reasonable financial standard. This isn't an opinion, this is just math being cruel. You might wonder who is still buying these houses then. Some have family money, some have dual high-income careers, and many are stretching themselves so thin that one medical bill or a single job loss would collapse their entire financial life. Let us look at a household we will call the Johnsons. They are two working professionals pulling in a combined $160,000 a year. That puts them well above the median and solidly in the upper middle class. Their gross income sounds impressive until the IRS shows up and takes their cut for taxes, FICA, and healthcare. After a modest retirement contribution, they are taking home around $9,500 per month. Once you subtract that $4,300 housing cost, they are left with about $5,100 for everything else. 2 car payments eat up $800. Insurance for those cars is another $250. Gas for commuting in suburbia is $300. Student loans for the degrees that got them the high-paying jobs take at least $600. Groceries for a family trying to eat healthy run $800 if they are careful. Utilities for a bigger house, electricity, gas, water, internet, add another $450. They are now down to $1,500 remaining before touching clothing, kids' activities, car repairs, medical copays, or the psychological need to occasionally leave the house and pretend they have a life. This household is spending 46% of their take-home pay on housing. These aren't irresponsible people buying jet skis, they are just trying to live in a house that the market tells them is normal. Day to day, this feels like checking your bank account before buying groceries or saying no to a kid's field trip because that $35 might be needed if a check engine light comes on. It feels like being one unexpected expense away from disaster at all times. The housing market doesn't care about these numbers. Sellers list at $500,000 because that is what the neighbor's house sold for. Banks approve at high ratios because the loan won't default immediately. The system is designed to get you into the house, not to ensure you can afford to stay there long term. Once you are in and have moved your furniture, you are trapped. You can't just walk away without destroying your credit and losing your down payment. So people stay, working jobs they hate because they can't risk an income disruption, slowly watching their savings evaporate. For 70 to 80% of households, a $500,000 home is simply not affordable sustainably. This isn't a personal failure, it is a market that has disconnected from income reality. Home prices have increased roughly 400% since 1990 while median income is up only 180%. You can't budget your way out of a structural affordability crisis. Let us look at Maya to see how this hits a single professional. She is 31, has a 760 credit score, and has $31,000 saved through genuine sacrifice, skipping vacations and keeping a roommate longer than she wanted. She makes $74,000 a year, which is above the national median. In her city, the median home is $385,000. With 10% down, her monthly cost would be over $3,000. Maya takes home $4,600 a month. Housing would eat 65% of her income. She cannot afford this house, not because she is irresponsible, but because the income required to buy that home comfortably is $110,000. The gap isn't a failure, it is structural and baked into the math. This situation feels like opening Zillow for the 16th time this week and saving a house you know you can't afford just to have somewhere to put the feeling. It feels like being responsible by every measure and still being systematically kept out of something your parents treated as a basic expectation of adulthood. The median age of a first-time buyer has jumped to 40 years old. In the early 90s, it was 28. Buying at 40 instead of 30 costs you roughly $150,000 in lost lifetime equity from that missing decade of appreciation. Meanwhile, 84% of Gen Z aspiring homeowners are delaying major life milestones like marriage or having children because of housing costs. The shortage we are seeing today wasn't an accident, it was built over 15 years of underbuilding after the 2008 crisis. The US is short between 3.5 and 4.5 million housing units. Builders focused on the upper end of the market because that is where the margins are, and the traditional starter home was essentially discontinued as a product. Now, high tariffs on steel, aluminum, and lumber have added up to $17,000 to the cost of every new home. This supply problem took a decade to create and will take at least a decade to solve. There is no policy lever that builds 4 million homes overnight. Today's market is different from 2008 in ways that are actually more frustrating for buyers. In 2008, banks lent money to people who couldn't repay it based on invented values. Today, the borrowers are qualified, the equity is real, and you still can't afford anything. It is a frozen, structurally constrained market. Millions of homeowners are sitting on mortgages with rates below 4%, rates that no longer exist. If they sell to move, they voluntarily surrender the cheapest money they will ever access and replace it with money that costs twice as much. On a $400,000 mortgage, that swap costs an extra $730 every month forever. This lock-in effect suppresses millions of transactions that would otherwise happen. Inventory remains 17% below 2019 levels. The market isn't collapsing, it has just stopped moving, like a door that is stuck vibrating but going nowhere. Even if interest rates were to drop significantly tomorrow, it might not fix affordability. A rapid drop to 5% would bring a wave of pent-up demand flooding back overnight, but supply wouldn't recover that quickly. Massive demand hitting insufficient supply would cause prices to spike again, potentially making the disease worse before it gets better. The most honest forecast is a slow, multi-year correction where prices move sideways while incomes gradually rise. If you are in your late 20s or 30s right now, you are navigating the most dysfunctional housing market any generation has faced since World War II. So what is the solution? You have to make decisions based on your real numbers, not the market's narrative. If your total monthly housing costs land below 30% of your gross income and you plan to stay at least 7 years, buying might make sense. If the math doesn't work at that threshold, it simply doesn't work. Stretching to 45% of your income just because an agent says it is a great time to buy makes you a future statistic, not a successful homeowner. Renting and investing the difference is a completely legitimate strategy that no one with a financial incentive will ever suggest to you. In a high-rate, high-price environment, putting that money into a low-cost index fund can absolutely compete with or outperform buying an overpriced house. You are not crazy for looking at listings and thinking none of this adds up. It genuinely doesn't. Understanding why it doesn't is the first step toward making a decision that actually works for you instead of participating in collective financial insanity. If your household income is south of $140,000 and you are looking at a $500,000 house, you need to stop. You are about to make a decision that will dominate and potentially ruin the next decade of your life. There is no prize for being house poor. The stress of barely making your payment will erase any pride you felt the day you got the keys. Real wealth is freedom, not equity you can't access because you are trapped by the asset that was supposed to make you wealthy. The financial industry profits when you buy, not when you make smart decisions. The bank makes money on your mortgage, the agent on the sale, and the insurer on your policy. Nobody makes money when you say, "No thanks, this doesn't work for me." You are not failing at adulthood because you refuse to financially drown yourself for granite countertops. You are just doing math that apparently nobody else wants to do. Sometimes the smartest move is recognizing when the game is rigged and choosing not to play. My name is Aliana. Start investing today, because 10 years from now, you will either be thanking yourself for your discipline or wondering what could have been.